So here is another example we're going to do. I'll let you read that in a second. First, I just want to describe a linear model in general. What does it mean to be a linear model? It means it's a model that describes a variable that increases or decreases at a constant rate or a constant rate of change. So they can always be written in this form. Y equals the starting value, which is what you get when t equals 0, plus the rate of change times t. So anything like that is going to be linear. So for example, we had the starting value of $5 plus the rate of change was $3 per hour. And anytime you have a rate, you're going to have some kind of units of something per something else. So you do dollars per hours times hours in this case to get the number of dollars you pay for those hours. So that's that. I'll give you a second to read this. After you're done reading it, unpause it, and we'll go over the problem. So first we're going to do a using the equation. So how long will it take to rent a bicycle for 6 hours? Or how much will it cost, excuse me? How much will it cost? So the question is asking what is C equal to? And then what it's given here is 6 hours. So that means T, the amount of time, is 6. So to answer the question, we can just put T equals 6 and leave C as a variable because you don't know what it is. Like so, and then we can just evaluate this. You can do the 3 times 6 is 18 plus 5 gives you 23. So whenever you have a word problem like this that's asking you to describe a real life thing, don't just say 23, make sure you say $23. So you know what it represents instead of 23 hours or 23 pesos or some other kind of unit. Then we'll look at how to do this with a graph in just a second because we can't actually do it with this graph. The problem is if we wanted to do this with this graph, we'd have to look where on the graph is t equal to 6. And we have 3 and then 4 is out here. 6 is going to be off on the side somewhere. It doesn't fit on the screen here. I didn't make a graph that's big enough to answer this question. So we're going to see how to make a graph to answer these questions with a calculator in just a moment. But right now for part B, how long can you bicycle for $18.50? This is giving you that the cost, C, is $18.50. And the time is what's unknown here. So you're going to leave that T as a variable, plug in the $18.50. And what we need to do now is solve this equation to get T by itself to see what is the T, what number works here to make this true, that makes the result become $18.5. So we can subtract 5 from both sides, and you get 13.5 on one side. 5 plus 3t minus 5 is just 3t. And then to cancel out that 3, you can divide both sides by 3. Because 3 times t divided by 3 is, of course, just t. And 13.5 divided by 3 is 4.5. So that means, and it's always good to check this, by the way, but what this should mean is that 4.5, when plugged into this original equation, will make the C become $18. So you could check it like, so I checked it by plugging in the 4.5 for T, and that did make the cost become 18.5, so you can answer it like that. And how could we answer these by using the graph? This graph doesn't help us, as you can see, because we don't have the cost going all the way up to 18.5. We don't have the hours going over to 6. So here's how you can do it with your calculator. So this is my emulator software where you can see the keys I've pressed here, and you can see what the screen will look like here. So first thing to do if you want to graph an equation is press the y equals button. That will get you to this screen. We're going to graph the equation c equals 5 plus 3t, but the calculator always wants the vertical axis to be called y, and it wants the horizontal axis to always be called x. So we're just going to use those variable names, and that's fine. So instead of it being c equals 5 plus 3t, it's y equals 5 plus 3 times x. And to get x, this is important, you need to use that button here. And then we should be able to graph it by just pressing the graph button here. And that looks like a pretty decent graph. Now, the window might not exactly be what you want. So if you want to change it so it looks like you start at 0 for t, because it doesn't make sense to have any negative values of t here, because that would be like if you rented a bike for a negative amount of time, which doesn't make sense. So to get rid of that stuff, go to Window. We want to change the x min. That's the lowest value of t. And it makes sense to have an x min of 0 if we're talking about a number of hours, when it doesn't really make sense for it to be negative. Then you can press enter, and maybe the x max can be 8. That should be good. The y min should maybe also be 0. So you can just hit enter, or you can scroll down like this, because it doesn't make sense to pay negative amounts of money for renting a bike. So we're going to leave that there. And then let's make the x max go up to, I don't know, 30. It's kind of an art to figure out what these should be to get the best looking graph, but you'll get practice with it. And now the graph looks a little bit more like this. Now there's some things you can do to try to answer the question. Let's look at the question really quick here. The first one was, how much will it cost to rent a bicycle for 6 hours? So that means we want to see what is c when t equals 6, or in other words, what is y equal to when x equals 6. And one way you can do that is, well, one way is to get kind of close by just pressing the trace button here. You can go press the arrows after you press the trace button, and this will give you some points. For example, 4.4 hours of riding will cost you $18.27. And you can keep going over until you get to x equals 6. Okay, now that's about 6, so it's going to be about $23. That's kind of close, but it's not exact. If you want to get more exact, you can just press the number 6. And that will make it so it will automatically go to the point where x equals 6, and then just hit enter. And you get that more exactly. So yeah, that gives you y equals 23, which checks out with our answer before. So that's a way to get it a little bit more precise. Now for the other one, to see what is y when, or sorry, what is t when c is 18.5, let's just trace to approximate that to kind of check our answer. So we want to make the y coordinate here be 18.5, right about there. And it looks like the x is about 4.5. But it gives you these weird values that aren't exactly where you want them to be. So we get 4.5106. That's okay. It still agrees with what we had before. Now, this is an exercise for you to do yourself. You don't actually need to show it on the graph because you might be doing it on your calculator. But using the same example, try to answer the question, how long can you rent the bicycle for $9.50? Do it yourself. I'm not going to work it out here. If you really are stuck, you can find the answer in the lesson. In the textbook at the end of the lesson, there's answers to these exercises. If you do copy it from there, remember you have to give credit because it's something you're supposed to do yourself, but you need to get some help. So you can just write credit, I got the answer from the book. And that's better than just copying it, and it's better than not doing it at all. Okay, I'll see you in the next video.